Bye, buddy.
Hey folks, it's Phoebe with Shrubsteppe Blooms. I'm out in the greenhouse tunnel and getting ready to sow more seeds, which I will spare you the time lapse of that one because I feel like that's all I've been doing lately. But so it's the very end of February, almost March, and I've got a handful of things I'm going to sow. I might hold off on the nasturtiums because they are frost, like they're not frost tolerant. So I might put those back in my little box over here. But we've got calendula, salpoglossus, and Nicotiana lavaterra, which I've never grown before. I've read that you're supposed to direct seed it, but then I also saw somebody say they winter sowed it, so we're gonna give it a shot, and if that doesn't work, I'll just direct sow it anyway. Some lupins, some salvia, and some different bachelor buttons, phlox, mini marigolds, and then the large standard marigolds. We got nasturtiums, which I just mentioned I might hold off on, and then edible peas. I've found that something always comes along and eats them, so I might just try jump starting them and then getting them out. The tomatoes I'm going to do in like the actual kind of traditional, if you want to call it, winter sowing method, where you have a transparent container that you fill with soil and then make a little greenhouse with. So these are all juice bottles my friend saved for me. I put 4 or 5 inches of soil in there, pop the seeds in, and then cover this up with the cap, I guess, of the bottle, and then just leave it, and it works fairly well. It works pretty well, all things considered. So if you don't have somewhere inside to start, I would definitely recommend doing some searching on your favorite browser of winter sowing methods. And there's another channel here on YouTube called Tanya with the Flowers that has a lot of YouTube like video content of winter sowing, and that's who I learned from a lot about this method. So we've also got stuff starting to come up, just like I kind of hoped would start happening. So we've got some little lettuce babies in there. The larkspur, not doing anything yet, but that's kind of par for the course. I kind of have hit and miss luck with larkspur, but there's a ton of volunteer plants out there, so it'll be okay. There's those bachelor buttons again. You can really start to see the chamomile. This is all dianthus seed that I saved, so I think next year definitely just going to start my dianthus out here, because why use a bunch of space inside if I could just be doing it out here. This is cruspedia, or the drumstick plant with the little yellow pom-pom flower heads. You can see our poppies are coming in very nicely. So this tray is breadseed poppies, and then California poppies down here. A few more breadseed poppies up here. This variety is fairly old seed, so it's not, that might be why it's doing some sad low germination rates. And then we've got a couple like Shirley poppy type varieties down there. There's those Godisha and Clarkia again. My sweet peas, I noticed when I was digging around back here, some of these seeds rotted, which I don't totally understand because I planted these at the same time, same conditions, etc. But I did bring out some seeds to replant this variety, which is what I noticed was rotting. We've got hollyhocks just starting to come in. I like growing hollyhocks, but I don't ever really have a good place for them. Last year I planted them next to the lavender that I was planting out, and they definitely shaded them, and I shouldn't have done that, but live and don't learn on my case, because I knew what I was doing and I did it anyway. And then we've got a whole bunch of little yarrow babies coming in, so these are all different kinds of colored varieties of yarrow. And then down here we don't have anything yet. We'll see if anything comes up in these trays. These were planted quite a while ago, but that's what that's looking like. And then over here we've got some bee friend, because I can never help myself. I always start a few of them, even though they do best by direct seeding. And then we've got another tray of Godisha coming in strong, and these are all like little special different colors that I got for my friend's wedding. But we've got a lot of potential out here, and I'm gonna get to seeding. The other thing I'm hoping to get to today is maybe pruning some roses, so we'll see how far I get with all of these projects. So it took a little while because I wanted to make sure I got my notes and my labels and all those things right, and I was distracted by the dog and all that stuff. But it's also really warm in here. It's probably, I want to say it's like 80 degrees inside the tunnel. I opened the little window door thing down there. We've got several more trays of stuff started. I'm going to cover that with some row cover, just like a fabric to keep the moisture in a little bit while they germinate. I ended up taking it off of these trays down on this side because they are in fact germinating, and it was trapping too much moisture and heat next to them when I had them covered. And then also I keep finding things after I'm like, look at all these different plants. These are some little lemon bee balm babies coming in, and these are super phenomenal for bees. So it's in the name, not surprising. They draw in all kinds of different cool bees and bumblebees, and it's so neat. But lots of little chamomile. Yeah, we already looked at all this, but it's super exciting. It'll all be coming together soon. I'm probably going to start taking some of these trays out, like out of the tunnel completely. So I need to thin some of this, obviously. But it's getting just so warm in here, they're not going to like it. So I also need the space. And since these survived like very cold temperatures as little seedlings, I think they'll be fine if I pop them outside. So that will be happening probably within the next week or so. So imagine, if you will, 30 more of these, like what I have going on in my tunnel, all potted up, waiting to go out in the field. This is just a really standard pussy willow that I got at a store a couple years ago. Just one little potted gallon size plant. And here it is, 2 springs later, like just really going for it. So I'm really looking forward to what those willows do in the future, because this one is phenomenal. Before I get going on the roses, I wanted to show that some of these daffodils are coming up. So these were planted in the fall of 2023. This is either just the straight, like standard yellow daffodils, or it's a mix of whites and doubles and that kind of stuff. That was what I planted then, and they're all planted around these rose bushes. So the real reason that I'm out here, other than to giggle and glee at my daffodils coming up, is to work on pruning some of these. So you can see up here, there's old flower blooms from last year that need to be taken off. There are stems that maybe don't look so good, so you can kind of see how the stem is all wrinkly and sad, and that is not something that's alive anymore. So I'm going to take that off. I will be like carting all the prunings that have thorns on them out of this area, because I don't want to step on them or trip on them when I'm out here in the summer, in particular when I don't like wearing boots. So I'm just trying to think ahead a little bit. And there's, you know, like 100, there's 100 and something roses out here, so there's a 0% chance that I'll get through all this afternoon. But every little bit counts. And I did start, there's no way you can see that, but I did start, you see that bear cane up there, that's a Colette climbing rose. That's where those rose arches are going to go eventually down the center here. I did work on cleaning her up, and there's some, like those 2 upper rows of roses I did work on already, so they're so bare you can't even see them because I stripped the leaves off. But yeah, all this in the hopes of having just a phenomenal year of growth out here. Not even necessarily looking for a lot of flowers this year. I just really want them to get well established, and then maybe next year in 2026 will be the year we just get wild bundles of flowers. But we'll see how they go. Some plants obviously much farther along, much larger, much faster growing than others, and that's fine. We'll see how they perform. That's a little bit about what this garden is about, is finding what works best in this climate and getting some beautiful flowers in the meantime. So I will just have to actually take care of the plants, like getting some pruning done. So that's up to. I ended up getting about 2 rows done, and it felt sort of like cheating, because when I started I realized I had already actually pruned several plants in one of the rows. I had just dropped all the clippings on the ground because I knew I was going to come back and finish. So I cleaned those up, picked those up a little bit, and tidied those plants up some more. But generally I still got maybe 3 or 4 rows to go, and it just takes a little bit of time and willingness to get poked, but it's going. Here are plants hardening off, so lots of cool season crops, getting used to being out in the sun, in the wind, and that kind of thing, and looking pretty good. So it's been about a week since I started all those peppers, and they are all coming up, the ones that are sitting on the heat mat. So I also figured it was time to check all the kind of more specialty super hot varieties that I was germinating. just in these baggies, and lo and behold, a lot of them are sprouting, so we can take a look at that. I have about 10 or 12 different varieties that I did that way, and you might notice there's a few little like mold spots on here, so it's really important to be checking these regularly, especially if they're taking a long time to germinate. But when I looked yesterday, pretty much everything, all but one bag, had signs of life, and that one bag was free seed we got several years ago, so I'm not super concerned if they don't do anything at all, and there's only a few seeds of those. So these are going right along. This actually already busted out and has cotyledons, so I really need to get going on seeding these into pots. And so how I'm going to do this is I'm going to put all the seeds that are sprouted into one of those pots with a label, and then that way if they don't grow, I don't waste a bunch of cell space and tray space on the light racks that I have in my office. And from there, once they have grown quite a bit, you know, put on some true leaves, I'll divide them into their own pots. And that way it kind of saves space, gives them a chance to all grow along together, and I can then pick out the healthiest ones. So that was the Caribbean red variety, which is a habanero type, I think. This bag is showing a fair amount of mold, and that doesn't surprise me because these are Scotch bonnet seeds that I saved from a plant we grew last year, so there's probably some fruit material in there that's also, you know, contributing to the mold because I didn't, you know, wash the seeds or anything. But if you get in close there, you can see the roots popping through this paper towel, so these definitely are ready to go. And again, they've got their cotyledons coming out already, and there's a fair amount of mold in there. So I'm sure there are treatments you could do to prevent this if you're saving your seed. You know, simply by washing them even would probably help, but I am not too concerned about it. I only need a few of these plants, so there should be plenty from here. From here, if I see that there's only a few seeds sprouted, I will put these back on the mats to keep trying to germinate the rest of the seeds if I don't have enough plants. If I have enough plants already, I can just compost the rest of these because we grow quite a few hot peppers, and we really just don't need a ton of them. So that's that. I'm going to get to it. So we're all done, ready to put this back on a heat mat under a lamp and grow on. There's a few varieties that I used up all of the seeds, and then these bags are going to go back on the heat mat as well under a tray to see if a few more will germinate.